The first time the Zelthari saw a human cry, they nearly doubled over in amusement. To them, emotions were archaic, useless remnants of weaker species, long culled from the galaxy. The Zelthari had evolved beyond visible displays of sorrow, grief, or longing. Their entire empire was built on logic, cold precision, and dominance. When they captured the human envoy aboard their dreadnought Oblivion's Crest, they expected resistance. What they got instead was something that baffled them: tears. Lieutenant Mara Jensen had been chosen to represent Earth in one of the most dangerous negotiations in human history. The Zelthari, having conquered dozens of civilizations, had extended their claws toward Earth, giving humanity one choice: submission or annihilation. Mara had stood tall in the council chamber of the alien ship, her uniform spotless, her voice steady. But when the Zelthari commander declared how many human lives they would extinguish if Earth resisted, her eyes glistened, her throat tightened, and the first tear slid down her cheek. The Zelthari murmured among themselves, their mandibles clicking in ridicule. Weakness, they thought. These creatures unravel at the thought of loss. To them, a single tear meant collapse. It meant surrender. The commander leaned forward, his multifaceted eyes glowing with superiority. "You break so easily," he hissed in his guttural tongue, but Mara did not break. Her tears fell freely, but her voice rose stronger. She spoke of the billions of lives on Earth, of children laughing in playgrounds, of old friends watching the sunset together, of families who held each other through hardship. Each word carried weight, and though her tears streaked her face, every syllable rang with conviction. The Zelthari scoffed. They saw liquid weakness. They did not yet understand that what they were witnessing was the essence of humanity, the power to feel, to connect, to mourn, and to rise even stronger because of it. That night, back in her cell, Mara cried again, not for herself, but for the countless faces she might never see again if Earth fell. Her tears pooled on the cold metal floor, reflecting the pale lights of the alien ship. She didn't know the guards were watching her through hidden lenses, confused, disturbed, and strangely moved. For the first time, some of them felt something stir inside. The Empire had underestimated humans, and soon they would learn that tears were not weakness. They were a weapon, one sharper than any blade, stronger than any shield. The Zelthari commander expected humans to plead, to collapse under threats, to barter desperately for survival. But instead, Mara's tears lingered in their memory like a splinter in steel. For centuries, the Zelthari had built their dominance on suppression. Entire species had been broken into silence by fear. They had conquered by stripping away individuality, demanding compliance, and shattering the bonds that made cultures strong. To them, emotions were a flaw. Yet as Mara's words replayed across the command feeds, some of the younger Zelthari officers couldn't look away from her expression. They had no equivalent for tears. Their species had evolved beyond visible sorrow, erasing outward shows of vulnerability in exchange for survival in harsh, predatory environments. But something about the shimmering salt trails on Mara's face unsettled them. She wept, yes, but she did not cower. Instead, her grief carried a defiance sharper than their blades. Meanwhile, in her cell, Mara was not alone. Other captives had been brought aboard, humans taken from outposts on Mars, Luna, and scattered colonies. When Mara spoke with them, she saw fear in their eyes, exhaustion in their slumped shoulders. She knew she couldn't let that fear fester, so she began to share her story. Every night, through the thin walls of their cells, she told tales of Earth, stories of a planet where oceans roared like thunder, where mountains stood as eternal guardians, and where fragile, short-lived people still managed to sing, laugh, and build wonders that touched the stars. Her voice wavered, and sometimes tears slipped free as she remembered home, but her vulnerability sparked something unexpected. The other captives began to cry with her, not out of despair, but in release. Each tear was a thread, weaving them together. The guards noticed. At first, they mocked it as a contagion of weakness. But then, one evening, a young guard lingered outside Mara's cell, transfixed. The sound of humans weeping, yet still speaking with hope, unsettled him. In Zelthari culture, any sign of emotional fracture was punished, but here were beings who embraced it, who turned sorrow into connection. And connection, the guard realized, was dangerous. Word spread through the ship. The humans were not breaking as expected, they were uniting. And the source of it all was the woman with tears in her eyes. When the commander finally summoned Mara again, he thought he was dragging her before the council to humiliate her further. But as she entered the chamber, bound but unbowed, something extraordinary happened. A murmur rose from the Zelthari ranks. Not derision this time, something closer to unease. Because in her presence, they felt it too. A stirring, a vibration in their chests they could not name. Mara stood tall, her eyes already welling. "You see weakness," she said softly. "But what you fear is what you don't understand. Tears aren't the end of strength, they're the beginning of it." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, Azelthari didn't know whether to laugh or listen. The battle had reached its breaking point. The alien armada loomed over Earth's skies, each warship blotting out the stars. Cities trembled beneath their shadow. Oceans churned with the weight of their energy beams. Humanity had never faced such overwhelming force. Every weapon launched at the aliens dissolved against their shields. Hope was waning, and the word surrender lingered in every trembling throat. But amidst the chaos, something happened that no strategist, human or alien, could have predicted. A child, separated from her parents in the ruins of New York, stood trembling in the middle of the battlefield. A squad of alien soldiers surrounded her. Their weapons, sleek and humming with blue plasma, were raised. One command, and she would vanish in an instant. The invaders paused it out of mercy, but calculation. Killing a child was meaningless in their culture, a waste of energy. Yet for humans it was the ultimate cruelty. They wanted to send a message. The girl began to cry. Her sobs rang out louder than the thunder of collapsing skyscrapers. Tears streaked her dirt-smeared face, glistening under the glow of alien lights. The soldiers tilted their heads, confused. To them, tears had always been a weakness, a liquid betrayal of self-control. They sneered, preparing to finish what they had started. But then, the unexpected happened. The child reached out her hand toward them, her tears sparkling as they fell. And in that fragile gesture, the aliens felt something ripple through the air, not energy, not force, but something they had no name for. A wave of raw emotion radiated outward, flooding into their minds. For the first time in their history, the aliens felt sorrow. One soldier dropped his weapon, his claws trembling as images filled his mind, visions of family, love, and the pain of loss. Another stumbled backward, clutching his chest as if struck by an invisible arrow. Their armor could repel bullets, fire, even nuclear blasts, but it had no defense against this invisible force. The girl's tears struck the ground like seeds, and from each drop a pulse spread further, not just to the aliens before her, but into the skies, into the warships orbiting above. Entire crews froze mid-command as their cold, analytical minds were drowned in a flood of feelings they had never known. Grief, compassion, longing, hope. On Earth, human soldiers paused in disbelief. They saw alien weapons lower, saw fear replaced by confusion. Some even saw alien eyes shimmering with wetness, though their species had never evolved to cry. The first tear of the child had done what no missile could. It cracked the armor not of their ships, but of their hearts. High above, in the mothership, the alien commander roared in frustration. His species had conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved countless civilizations, but never had they encountered this. A weapon that was not a weapon. An attack that was not destruction, but connection. The war had changed in an instant, and humanity, for the first time, realized their tears were not weakness. They were their greatest strength. The moments spread like wildfire. Reports came in from across the globe. Alien squads faltering, ships hesitating in orbit, soldiers paralyzed not by bullets, but by the sight of human tears. What had started with one child in New York began to ripple outward, an unstoppable tide of emotion breaking against the cold machinery of conquest. Scientists and generals convened in underground bunkers, their screens filled with live footage of the impossible. They watched as mothers, fathers, soldiers, and even entire crowds began to cry openly, tears streaming down their faces as they faced their invaders. The effect was undeniable. Wherever tears fell, the aliens weakened. Their movements slowed, their resolves shattered, their weapons clattered to the ground as they staggered under the weight of emotions they had no defenses against. What is this?" whispered Dr. Helena Vasquez, a neuroscientist who had been studying alien biology since first contact. Her voice shook as she watched alien soldiers collapse to their knees in sobs, unable to process the flood of grief and love pouring into them. It's not chemical, it's not viral, it's resonance, a frequency of the heart." General O'Connor, grizzled and battle-worn, slammed his fist on the table. "Then we make it a weapon. If our tears can shake them, then we give them every tear we've ever cried. Every sorrow, every loss, every ounce of humanity they thought was weakness, will turn it into our firepower." But how? How could tear something so deeply personal be channeled into something organized, something that could match fleets of warships blotting out the sky? The answer came not from the generals, nor the scientists, but from the people. In cities still standing, survivors began to gather in circles, holding hands and crying together. Not out of fear, but out of unity. They cried for the homes they had lost, for the loved ones who had fallen, for the earth itself. Battered and bleeding under the alien siege, each tear seemed to strengthen the resonance, amplifying the invisible force that rippled outward. The aliens called it the shattering. To them, it felt like their very souls were being torn open. They had no words for empathy, no concept of shared grief. Their species had evolved without it, and now, they were being drowned in it, overwhelmed by an ocean of feelings that stripped them bare. In one captured broadcast, an alien commander, trembling and broken, hissed into the camera, "They are not weak, they are unyielding. Their pain is endless, and it binds them together as one. We cannot stop it." The world watched as that same commander fell to his knees, clutching his chest as though stabbed by an unseen blade. His troops abandoned their posts, not because they were defeated, but because they could no longer bring themselves to fight. For the first time in history, war was not won by fire or steel, but by tears. Yet humanity was only beginning to understand the scope of their gift. The resonance was growing stronger, spreading faster, and as whispers filled the air, one truth became undeniable. This was no accident of biology. This was something greater, something woven into the fabric of existence itself. Tears were not just human, tears were universal. The skies above Earth grew strangely quiet. Alien warships, once buzzing with precision and menace, now hovered in uneasy silence. From orbit, their fleets looked like vultures circling prey. They could no longer bring themselves to strike. But inside those ships, something unthinkable was happening. The tears of humanity, the resonance of grief and unity had reached their cores. The alien soldiers, once mechanical in discipline, were unraveling. Some resisted desperately, tightening their armor, slamming their claws against metallic walls to drown out the emotions invading their minds. These were the loyalists, clinging to the old ways of domination, refusing to believe that a species they deemed weak could be their undoing. Yet others began to change. Private journals were intercepted, scrawled in the alien language but hastily translated. Notes of confusion, awe, and even longing. One soldier confessed, "I do not understand. The sound of their crying is unbearable, and yet it warms me. It feels like standing near fire. Painful, yes, but also alive. For the first time, I feel alive." Another wrote, "They grieve together. We have no word for this. When one suffers, the others come closer. They become stronger. We were taught unity through fear. They have unity through love, which is stronger." The alien high command raged at the reports, branding defectors as corrupted. But cracks had already formed. Entire squadrons refused orders, ships turned off their weapons, and whispers of defection spread like sparks across dry leaves. On Earth, humans noticed the change. During one standoff in London, an alien platoon advanced on a group of civilians. The humans, exhausted but unbroken, simply held one another and wept. Instead of firing, several of the alien soldiers dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. Trembling, their commander screamed at them to attack. They did not. The crowd of survivors, astonished, reached out not with guns, but with open hands. To the shock of all watching, two of the aliens accepted. Their claws, built for killing, touched human hands for the first time in peace. Across the planet, more stories like this emerged. The invaders were no longer united. Some turned ruthless, lashing out with even more violence to resist the emotional tide. But others surrendered. For the first time, humans and aliens stood side by side, crying together. The implications rippled everywhere. Could humanity's greatest weapon, empathy, truly bridge the gap between species, or was this merely a lull before an even greater storm? Among the fractured alien ranks, a council of dissenters secretly formed. They had seen the strength of humanity's tears. They whispered of rebellion not against humans, but against their own empire. For the first time, they questioned their leaders, their history, their very identity. And at the heart of it all, humanity realized something chilling. If their tears could unmake an empire, then perhaps this gift was never meant to be confined to Earth alone. The alien armada, once the embodiment of dominance, fractured into something unrecognizable. Reports streamed back to their homeworld, soldiers laying down arms, fleets refusing to fire, entire battalions surrendering not to superior weapons but to a tide of emotion they had never prepared for. The High Council of the alien empire was livid. Their transmission, broadcast across the fleet, was a mix of fury and disbelief. "You are warriors, you are conquerors. Do not let the primitive wails of lesser beings infect your hearts. But it was already too late. The infection they feared was not weakness. It was humanity's greatest strength, empathy, carried through the salt of tears. On Earth, the resistance gathered strength. More and more aliens defected, and with them came knowledge, ship schematics, codes, strategies. Yet the humans did not immediately seize the advantage. Instead of using tears as a weapon to destroy, they used them to build bridges. In a monumental act, humans and alien defectors marched side by side in a ruined city square. Cameras captured the sight, a human child offering a cloth to an alien soldier whose claws trembled as tears fell from his black, glassy eyes. The image spread faster than any transmission of war. It was hope, raw and undeniable. The Council tried one last gamble. They deployed a resonance nullifier, a massive device meant to drown out human emotions. To sever the strange connection, it hummed in orbit, a black monolith of silence. But when it activated, something unexpected happened. The nullifier did not erase the resonance, it amplified it. Human grief, human love, human unity surged like a storm through the void. Across the Empire, citizens who had never even seen a human suddenly felt it, the pulse of sorrow, the warmth of compassion, the defiance of a species that refused to break. On distant alien worlds, civilians collapsed in confusion, clutching their chests as if hearing humanity's heartbeat inside them. Entire colonies rioted, demanding to know why their leaders had hidden this truth. Warriors threw down their weapons, unable to continue fighting against a people who fought not with fire but with feeling. The empire itself, built on fear, conquest, and silence, began to crumble, and humanity, scarred and battered, stood at the center of it all, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as something the galaxy had never seen before, a species whose tears had the power to unite. In the aftermath, a fragile peace emerged. Alien defectors swore loyalty not through fear, but through shared grief and newfound understanding. Humanity became a symbol not of weakness, but of a deeper strength no weapon could replicate. The lesson was undeniable. What the aliens once mocked as child crying, grieving, feeling became the very thing that reshaped civilizations. In the ruins of war, as humans and aliens rebuilt side by side, one phrase echoed across the stars: empathy is stronger than any empire.